So, Heath, here we are at the end of the year, and a lot of companies, a lot of businesses are thinking about 2026. But before you get too far ahead, you and I talked about this. It's good to maybe just reflect and debrief on the year that is ending. So, what's some advice or some ideas that we can give to small business owners to help them start to think ahead without overcomplicating things and really focusing on what matters?
Yeah, I think as with any small business, we are prone to having our head down in the weeds, working on what is urgent at the moment. And especially around the holidays, people begin to kind of down ramp a little bit. And, you can start having people disengage and they just kind of want to get out of the office for the holidays. But it is crucial that we take a few minutes a day, whatever, to what we've been doing over the last year. Now, ideally, in a perfect world, if you're following what Brent and I talk about, you're doing this quarterly. You started the year with a plan, you're checking up on it quarterly, you're revising that plan quarterly, whether it's talking about goals for different departments, whether it's talking about your P&L. Those things should be intentional in your business. So for those who are following our system, following our plan, that already is happening. Those rhythms are there. But for those of you who might be new to what we're talking about, it all starts with just acknowledging that it's important to have these conversations about where are we going and what are we doing. And so we want to end the year with that conversation. So, Brent and I would always pull our stakeholders together. Stakeholders are either your board members or your leadership team. And we start talking through what went right, what went wrong this year. Are we on track? Are we off track? Are we happy with where we are? What does what we did this year, how does that affect the coming quarter and the year to come? And so I love a debrief. I love to stop for a minute, look back and go, what did we accomplish? And what must be true for us to accomplish our goals for next year?
So there's a couple of ways to approach that. Obviously, one is if you've got a 3, 5, 10-year vision and you're kind of working towards that. Let's say you're not there yet. You start with where you are or where you've been. How do you take the assessment of where you are and start to build something that gets you out of just the day to day, where you're actually working towards something strategic versus just the next, to-do list?
There's always going to be something to work on in a small business. And usually that's going to be the emergency of the minute. Your door flies open and one of your team members is there with their hair on fire. And you can literally spend your entire career putting fires out and dealing with those types of situations if you don't take some time to pause and get above that. So that to me is where it starts, is that we've got to take some time out of what we're doing to to look forward, to look ahead as to what we actually want to be when we grow up, so to speak. What does this business look like by the end of next quarter, by the end of next year? And what are we doing to make that possible? If you don't do that, you will just do the thing that's in front of you. And so having those meetings scheduled where we're going to actually start working on those things, and then we start talking about who's going to be working on certain projects, assigning those things, making sure that each person is responsible for a part of what it is that we want to accomplish this year, and getting that on paper on purpose before the year is over. And I think it's important to do it before we leave for the holidays. If you allow yourself to roll into January and you haven't had these conversations and people don't know what their marching orders are, you'll spend the entire month of January just kind of pulling all this stuff together. And now you've got 11 months to get your year done, not 12. And so it's always refreshing for people to go off on the holidays, come back after the new year, and everybody knows what they're working on. Everybody
Oh,
knows what the goal is, and we're ready to attack it. It can kind of feel like a little bit of a false start if we wait till, January or mid-January, or even, God forbid, into February before we're having these conversations.
yeah. Yeah. I've worked for companies where they didn't have their budget finalized till April. And it's like, wait a second, you just lost
Time to
an
start the
entire
next year.
quarter. Yeah. So let's give them some practical frameworks here. One of the things, so I like to start with clarity, assessing where you are today. We have done an exercise many times, and it's part of, the services that we offer called the 4 helpfuls, where you walk through these 4 questions with your team. What's working right now with the business? Spend time really, like, you want to magnify and amplify what's actually good about your business. So it's important to capture that information. The next is what's not working. Obviously, that's probably going to be a longer list, right? The next one, the next two kind of, are designed to make you think a little bit differently about where you're going, and that's what's missing. So if you could have something in your business today or tomorrow that you don't have today, what would that be? And then the last one is what's confused or what's confusing. What are some processes or things that are just not understood well by the team? So all of those things together give you a pretty clear picture. Now you can do this a couple of different ways, right? You can just make your own list, but where we've seen this work is like you said at the start, you bring a group of stakeholders together and you walk through those questions and you really get past that first layer, right? The stuff that you're always talking about. What's that next layer? So what's been in your experience in that environment?
Well, I personally love the four helpfuls. There's a reason why we recommend it as the first step for most of the people who want to work with us, because it's simple and it's highly effective. I love simple. I don't love to overcomplicate. And I also like things that get people talking. And so when you bring a group of people together and you start asking questions like what's right, wrong, missing, and confused in the business, buddy, you can expect that your team has something to say about those things. I know that was my experience when we would do it. I mean, there's usually, especially your mouthy people like me, they're sitting there, they can hardly wait for the question to come out because they got a lot on their mind that they want to discuss, especially about what's wrong and missing or confused in the business. The what's right category is not the one those people typically gravitate towards, but I love it because when people have permission to say what's on their mind, I know we've talked about this in other videos, but anytime we're doing these exercises, I always like to tell my team, hey guys, today you get a free pass. You can say whatever you want to say. No one's getting fired. Nobody's getting reprimanded. The point of this meeting is to get out the truth of our business. And if we'll do that well, we're going to grow from this experience. And so if you really practice that and people believe you, you're going to get a lot of honesty in that meeting. And you're going to find out really quickly that there are some things popping up to the surface that several people on the team are beginning to pick up on. And sometimes it's boiled over to the point where it's a real emergency. And all of that stuff comes out in a four helpfuls exercise. And so you can quickly determine, first of all, what's going great in our business. And do we need to magnify those? Do we need to put the gas down and do more of those? That gives you some options to look at for the coming year. Maybe instead of working all of these bad things over here, maybe we just need to hit the gas on a couple of these good ones. Or maybe you discover that your greatest opportunities are in some of the things that are wrong, missing, or confused in your business, that by simply fixing one of those things, you can 4x your business. And so that conversation gives you so much information and material to work with as you begin the process of deciding, what do our goals look like for the next year? What are we hoping to accomplish? And where should we focus our efforts? That exercise pulls that out, and you get a little bit of a consensus mentality going here. It's not just what the owner thinks or what one trusted person thinks, but it's that entire leadership team who are also probably communicating on behalf of a group that they lead if your business is big enough. And so you're going to start hearing pretty quickly where most people think the problem is. We've talked about the front lines of your business. These are your frontline people, and they're going to start telling you what's going on at the front line that needs to be addressed. And that's going to be where your best opportunity is for growth for the next year, for planning accordingly. Because, when you're putting goals together, you don't want them to be things that really don't matter, or that really in the grand scheme of things are not that important to the business. You want to move the needle on this stuff so that a year from today, we look back and go, wow, look what we accomplished in such a short period of time. But you have to know where the opportunities are in your business if that's going to be true.
Yeah, and I think as a leader, your job is kind of threefold. One, it's like you said, to set the tone and create safety within the space, right, where people can be honest. Second, I think it's to just listen and not be, the loudest voice in the room. Again, something you referred to. But the third one I think is to identify the patterns, right? Because this is your chance to, again, you're bringing all this data and you're collecting it, and then you're going to see patterns emerge where I thought that was just the one guy who was complaining about that thing, but no, basically the whole team is saying that this is a problem, but we haven't addressed it in an honest way, in a direct way. So once you identify, like, that helps you kind of clarify the things that need the most attention, and that leads to the second component of this planning process is alignment. So getting everybody on the same page is really important because, again, like you said at the beginning, last thing you want is showing up in January and you're not you're not really doing anything different, right? It feels like it's the same old, and you're just, again, you're back to putting out fires and nobody's really kind of working on anything new or exciting, which at the beginning of the year, that's when you have the momentum, it's that fresh start and people get it, there's a renewed energy around just business and life and, people set resolutions. So you want to capture that. And so getting to the alignment stage, I mean, in my experience, maybe you can relate. I feel like we were in a lot of rooms where that's the thing that took the longest. It's identifying what is actually important, but also what must be true in order to kind of get it to the next stage.
Yeah, every decision we make in business has trade offs. And so we've got to decide as a leader and also as a leadership team what we're willing to accept in order to achieve what we want to achieve. Sometimes we discover that there is a really big opportunity, but the lift is unbelievable in order to pull that off. And so then you go, okay, well, is what we gain worth the lift given the current circumstances that we're facing in our industry or in our business? So that one you might say, okay, well, let's look at the second thing on the list and go, okay, this one doesn't have anywhere near the lift. We can pretty much do it with the team we have now. And it's not going to get us 10x growth, but it's going to get us 5x growth for no extra people, no extra money or whatever. So you begin to prioritize things based on the circumstances that you're actually facing. So it's very important to look at trade-offs. You can't just look at it and go, well, that's the biggest opportunity. Yeah, but it's also the biggest lift. And in the context that you're facing at the moment, it may not be your best choice. And so alignment is all about getting everybody to look at this from multiple angles and us all coming together and agreeing on based on not what is in a perfect scientific environment the best thing to do right now, but what is it given the circumstances that we face. What's been happening in the battle, what are our casualties, what's our ammunition looking like right now, how many of our tanks don't work, and given all of that information, are we in a position to go take that big hill, or do we need to take this little one down here next year while they're fixing the tanks? A lot of metaphor there, but that to me is how you have to start thinking about this stuff. We can't make decisions in a vacuum as business owners. We've got to see the information on the ground. And that's what bringing your team together does. You're going to have the mechanics in the room. You're going to have the munitions people with you, and you're going to know the status of your business so that you can choose the thing that has the most likelihood of bringing success next year. So it's not always the biggest bang. Sometimes it's something that's going to be a little bit less growth, but with almost no lift that you end up deciding to go after in the coming year.
Right. And you can't torch your existing business just to go chase something that might pay off in the future. And that's the other thing. It's really challenging for businesses is to make space for innovating and investing back into the business versus just maintaining and growing, the thing. But we've talked about that before too, right? It's like you've got to have parallel paths. And we had several different approaches to kind of how that worked. In some cases, we'd have a team that was just focused on the new and shiny. I think we might have called them like an invention squad or something like that. On the other side, you've got that group that is in charge of keeping the lights on and maintaining the operations of the business because that is what is paying the bills. And you don't want to go into a planning cycle saying, all right, what are we going to do new and big and exciting this year? It's about, all right, based on where we are and what's working, what do we have the capacity to do that may be different? And that's the thing, to your point about trade-offs. So that's the third component of this planning process, focus. You've got your clarity. You've got your alignment, or at least you're starting to align. You probably have 10, you might have 20, you might have 100 ideas. You can't do all of them. So coming out of those four helpfuls, 3 questions I like to ask: what are we going to start? What are we going to continue? And what are we going to stop? Again, the trade-off conversation, you can't do it all. And there's probably some stuff that you need to stop. But again, back to the operations, there's definitely stuff that you need to continue. So how do you get from 100 ideas down to 3, 4, maybe 5 rocks that you know your team has capacity to tackle?
Well, you know, obviously everything starts with our ultimate vision of the business. Who do we want to be and where are we going? And so everything that we decide to do for the next year has to support that in some way. We can't just say, well, I think we'll go over here to the left or we'll go over here to the right. We ought to be working towards a stated vision 10 years out for the business. And then we trickle back from there to decide what we're going to do this year, this quarter, and then tomorrow. So I think it has to, so what we work on has to align with who we've said we are. And hopefully, if you're following what we teach, this group has already gotten together and they've decided who they are and where they want to go. There is a 10-year vision that has been put down that everybody in the room agrees on. So now we have a filter to look at all of these ideas to decide which of these things clearly fit into this and which of those don't. You and I have been in quite a few of these meetings where some really good ideas come up, but and we probably could pull it off because we had the money, we had the talent, but it had nothing to do with our vision, nothing to do with who we wanted to be, who we stated we were going to be. And so, like you said, you can get kind of preoccupied with the new and shiny, but that has nothing to do with getting us to our destination. You know, if you've said you're going to sail from Spain to New York, you know, sometimes Myrtle Beach looks really nice while you're floating, but that's not where we're going. We're headed to New York and we got to stay on that path. And so utilizing that vision statement that we've put together is going to guide a lot of those decisions. And then I would say that as owners and as visionaries that most of our listeners are going to be, there's this tendency to want to do everything. There is, you hear these ideas and you know, you kind of feel invincible. There's nothing we can't do. There's nothing we can't accomplish. But then it's got to be looked at from that filter of, you know, what is our current capacity? And if we're like, okay, you know what? I want to do it anyway. We don't have the capacity to do it right now. I still want to do it. Then the question is, what must be true in our business to pull that off? You know, that was one of the lessons I learned a long time ago in working with one of our leaders who was one of the most driven people I've ever met. And for, you know, a couple of years in my early leadership time with him, I would go in the office and, you know, we were leading the largest, most profitable business in the company. And often it would be a conversation of him wanting to do something, but me realizing what the cost of that was. And so I would be trying my best to explain what that was going to do to our existing business to accomplish this thing. So over time, I started sounding like the negative guy in the room that didn't want to do anything. That wasn't at all true, but it was communicated poorly by me. And then I learned over time that I needed to start having these conversations differently and say, hey, we can do anything you want to do, but we're going to have hire 40 people. We're going to have to build out a whole new tech stack, and we're going to need about $5 million, and we're going to need it in 30 days, but we can do it if you want to do it. And that gives that leader something to work with. So, you know, leaders, I would say that they want to do everything. Their team has got to do a good job of bringing all that information to the surface about what it's going to take to achieve that. And then some advice I would give to the owner is to listen to your team. These exercises you're going to go through can get your blood pressure up. You're going to hear some stuff that you're going to get irritated by. Sometimes you don't feel like some of the things they say are true. Sometimes you feel like there's hyperbole in the room. People are making a mountain out of a molehill, and it's going to irritate you. But you need to listen to what they're saying, because if enough voices start popping up and saying the same thing, you have an issue and you need to be listening to that. That was one of the best things I did in those meetings. I was the shot caller, but I learned that if I started running my mouth too much too often, it would squelch the conversation and the ideas. Once the people start realizing where the owner and the leader, where his mindset or her mindset is, it's easy for groupthink to pick up and go, well, I want to stay on the owner's good side, so I'm going to be careful what I say. And that's dangerous. You always want an environment where people are willing to take you on respectfully. And that's where we had our magic on our team, is when, yes, I'm in charge, but on the org chart. But in this room, we all have a voice and we're all going to speak up. And it almost got to be a thing on my team where, you know, I'm disappointed in you a little bit if you don't push back, if you don't speak up. And so there's almost like a different kind of peer pressure there. Hey, I expect to hear from you, If you're always agreeing with me, I'm gonna have a problem with it. So you need to tell me what you think. And that gets the room talking so that hopefully the real ideas actually come out and that you're doing a good job as the leader listening to what's going on. And then we use that vision to filter what we've heard to decide on what our focus ought to be going forward in the new year.
Yeah, that's good. It can't be all the things. It can't be none of the things. And understanding where the rubber meets the road. I feel like I saw you in some cases use every muscle in your body to just let some of those comments, bounce off of you, or maybe you were just absorbing them. But yeah, I saw you grow a lot, man, over a few years.
It can be tough to hear somebody call your baby ugly, so to
Yep.
speak. And a lot of times, new people come into the team and they see your business and they don't like what they see, and you've given them permission to say it. But you know what? 100% of the time, it either caused me to explain to them why they were incorrect and then get others to back me up with that, or hear their point, take their point, and make changes in the business. Sometimes, and that's another side of this conversation, is that sometimes there's opportunity for growth for your team member. They go, okay, you don't understand how we got to where we are with this.
Hmm.
There's a reason this exists. I can think of a couple of things on our team that, on the surface seemed like a really strange thing for us to do. But then as a person understood our business and how we got there, it made a little bit more sense to them. So sometimes there are opportunities in these sessions to, educate with company history. It's also an opportunity to look at what we would call sacred cows. Are we holding on to some things that did make sense for a long time, but now that
Hmm.
the new people are looking at them again and rethinking them, maybe this sacred cow is no longer sacred and it needs to be moved on out and we need to move into a new day. But that's the beauty of these types of exercises, that when everyone in the room is able to participate in that, we get this stuff out and the focal point of the new year begins to emerge. We start to see the things that have the right amount of lift and the right amount of opportunity and the right amount of push toward the vision. And that's really what you're looking at for focus. Which of the things are going to give me that? And there may be years where you go, hey, we really are going to go out and hire 40 people. But most of the time, your next year project is not going to be that thing. It's going to be something you can pull off now. And maybe we start on the back half of next year starting to hire more people so that we can do that bigger thing in year two.
Yes, and the other aspect of the focus element is that you need to make this time focus on this process, because it will not happen if you're doing it an hour a month, or you schedule a 2 hour lunch and you've got half the people there. It's not going to work. I would recommend at minimum half day. You either start with lunch and then take the afternoon, or you work up until lunch, but a full day, and sometimes more is better, just depending on the size of the business and the size of the team. But yeah, you're not going to accomplish this with minutes here, minutes there.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons that we do it a couple different ways. We have done these sessions via Zoom with businesses. We've also done these with being in person with businesses,
Mhm.
and taking that time off to get everybody around to do this is super important to get the focus. But here's one other thing I'll add to the process. Once you've finally gotten everybody in the room and everybody's agreed that this is what we want to accomplish for next year, everybody knows what they're going to focus on in Q1. The worst thing you can ever do as a team, especially as a leader, is to ignore it and forget that you ever had the conversation. And that sounds obvious, but I can't tell you how many times I've seen that happen. And the way you prevent that is you have ongoing check-ins throughout the year. We do that on a quarterly
Yeah.
basis with our clients. We actually say, hey, we are going to get together at the end of the quarter. You guys need to be getting together on a weekly and a monthly basis. It's quick. The rhythms are not lengthy, but they need to be there. And then we check in with our clients on a quarterly basis to make sure that all of the work we put into this plan is actually taking place. Because your team begins to lose hope if every year you sit down and make a plan and every year you throw the plan in the trash on the way out the door. And again, it doesn't usually happen on purpose. It happens because you get refocused back onto the emergencies of the moment. That's where those weekly, monthly, and quarterly disciplines have to be present so that we really do stick to what we said we're going to do. And that is incumbent upon the leader. And that must be trickled down through the entire organization that this year we are going to work this plan. I know in the past we may have had great ideas that we did not pull off. This year we will be doing so. And you get that throughout the team and they start seeing that you're serious once those meetings start hitting every week. Got a morning stand up, a weekly check in, and then a quarterly planning session with people like us to make sure that stuff's happening. Then it gets serious when people are being held accountable for the part they said they were going to contribute. I know me personally, anytime I'm in one of those meetings and it's our weekly check-in, and I had committed to doing something on that list, and I'm staring at my name with a task and a date on it, I know I'm going to be working a lot harder to get that done because I'm going to have to be accountable to my team. And who wants to be the leader that's the only one in the room not getting their stuff done? And so that's a big motivator for me, just simply knowing that at the end of the week, I have to account for whether or not I moved my ball forward or not. And so those check-ins keep everyone honest and doing the micro steps that lead to those macro big wins for your business.
Yep, that's it. And that's the difference between, I think, businesses that succeed long term. It's, the accountability part, it's not just the fourth section of the planning process in terms of 25%. It's probably 90% is the accountability piece,
I
because your
agree.
ideas are going to change, because the market's going to shift and you're going to have new team members coming in, and strategically you might evolve. But if you've got your vision and if you've got your accountability system, everything else in between, I think, is going to kind of take care of itself. Jeff Bezos has a famous saying where we are stubborn on vision, but flexible on the details. And that's really, I think, the accountability needs to be part of your vision as a leader, because that's ultimately what leads. You're not, because half the time you're not going to feel like working on the thing that you said you needed to work on. And, or again, you're going to get distracted by all the other stuff that you have to deal with as a business owner. But the accountability piece, if you're checking in with your people and you really care that that is the right thing, then that's what the system is going to be, the thing that helps you get it done. We're not going to sit there and pretend that you've got to will your way through this. Put the system in place and let it run your business for you.
That's right. A lot of you who are maybe new to what we're talking about here, you're listening to this, say, that sounds great, but we don't even have a vision for our business. And so that is the first step. And I would invite anyone listening to this that has an interest in getting some structure to your business and actually happening to your business instead of it happening to you. I'd invite you to give us a call, connect with us on our website. We would love to just spend a little bit of time talking through this with you and talking about how we can get a vision for your business that then will allow you to have something to aim at as you are building out your yearly plan. And we can teach any business how to do this type of planning, how to be intentional about it, and how to have accountability in their business. This is not something that I had in my business for a long time, but I can tell you our business grew exponentially once we put it in place. There was a lot less stress. There's enough stress to go around in business. There's always going to be something, but trying to keep up with what we said we were going to do this year should not be one of those things. That should be, as you were saying earlier, on autopilot. These should be things that we don't have to, like you said, strive to get done. These things are pre-programmed into the system, into the template of our business. We are always going to be doing these things so that the goals get done naturally and they're not forced. So if that sounds like a foreign concept to you, you're probably a good candidate just for a free call with us. There's no charge. We love to talk to you guys and learn about your business and find out how we might be able to help. And then we are likely to prescribe the 4 helpfuls for you. And then from there, start talking about how we can build out a full on vision with a plan year to year to actually achieve that goal.
Great. So people can go to howtobusinesscoaching.com. You can schedule a call. You can send us an email. You can send us a voicemail. You can send us a text message. All of that information's there. But we'd love to have your questions, but we'd love to talk to you as well. So good conversation. Good luck planning for 2026 and beyond.
Thanks, Brent.